Okay, I think we got connected now. We'll just settle down. We'll wait till kind of Instagram notifies. Okay. Okay, here we are. Hi Ruchi Goshar. I think it just went the notification and hopefully it'll reach to all the followers. And hi doctor. I think it's just getting connected. Yeah, looks like we are connected now. Hi doctor, am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. The video is little laggy, but I think it will take a couple of seconds to just kind of tune in with mine and yours. So we'll just wait for a
Okay.
minute. Yeah. We'll just wait for a minute. And I think once the viewers also keep joining to kind of fluctuate. So we'll just wait. Okay. So the topic is censorship. Okay. So how are you doing? I can see a lot of nice, very practical posts on Imperium page, and we every morning we keep watching me and Ozzy, and those are really very very nice, and I'm sure it's helping a lot of parents around. So that's very nice.
Thank you. I'm trying to keep it practical and not too much of jargon because that might confuse people a bit.
Yeah. It's very practical, very creative, and very nicely explained as well. So that's very good.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, I think we will have followers coming in. So we'll slowly and steadily start. I can see Instagram staff also joining in. Prerna is there, Ozzy is there. So that's good. So we'll wait and I'll just check if I'm ready with the questions as well. Okay. So hi guys, good evening. This is Dr. Harish Badige and I hope all are doing safe and sound. And as we all know, we have started this live series with the experts. And today again we have Dr. Franzina and this is our second live session with her. And the first one was so informative, so insightful. We decided to, take it one step ahead and get it more practical for parents, especially when it came to dealing with autism or any child having sensory issues. So that's how we happened to choose the topic, which is sensory issues and strategies. How do we cope up? How do we address that being at home? So, Dr. Franzina, I have questions related to sensory issues, and we'll wait if there are any questions coming up. Many parents are joining in. I can see that. So let's get started.
Sure.
Okay. So, doctor, what forms of common sensory problems we come across in children, and why do sensory problems really occur?
So I'm going to break this down into a few
Yes,
pieces
yes.
here. So when we talk about sensory problems or sensory processing, let's talk about that a little bit, right? All of us have different sensory organs like our eyes, our ears, our skin. Um, Again, when you have a sensory processing issue, it is not the organs that have a tough time, with the touch or with seeing what you're seeing, but it's the part of the brain that understands this information and gives you some kind of an output that is causing either overreaction or underreaction. You are going to have some kind of a problem with sensory processing, so to speak of, I'll give you a couple of examples. Some of the most common things that we see are parents complaining about kids going for haircuts.
Right.
I think we might address this a little later. It was one of the questions you had for me, and I think it's so that's where a child is hypersensitive to touch. He feels normal touch or the touch of the razor being magnified many-fold. Research has spoke about how it's compared to ants biting. Sometimes is that painful for the child. So I teach you some tips and techniques to deal with it while at home or before the child goes for a haircut. Some other things that we commonly see are not liking to put glue
Right.
or playing with sand in kids who go to schools, not liking the tags on your shirts or your clothing that you have, not liking socks very often. You'd be surprised with the number of moms who say my kids don't like to wear shoes or socks. This is basically because of the pressure that they feel on their feet. It's magnified again. I think the other end of the spectrum is where you see parents who talk about, their kids bumping into things. They're very clumsy. I don't know what to do about it. So these are people who don't feel their body in space. So they are very under responsive. They are not registering information adequately, and so they fall to the other end of the spectrum. So it's like a line. Being normal, all of us have our quirks, but
Correct.
being normal is somewhere in the middle, with a little on either side. But if you have a problem, you probably tend to go either towards one end, which is overreacting, or to the other end, which is underreacting.
Right.
Very simply put.
Right. Right.
So typically those are some of the very common problems we see in school going kids and really young kids. Now, if you're looking at a younger age group between 1 to 3, maybe, you could see somebody who's super irritable and cries a lot, doesn't want to be put down. This could be also because they're seeking vestibular stimulation, so they need to constantly be with the mom being carried around and probably need the deep pressure. So that's the other thing that could be a problem. So these are two of the two ends of the spectrum that you could possibly see.
So just to add on to that, so especially when the child does not have any specific diagnosis, and we have seen many children also coming up with sensory issues. So do you think environment also plays a role in the early days of their development based on how they are exposed to?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what's happened is parents have become very protective.
Correct.
They don't want to put their kids down on the floor. They don't want them to be exposed to the environment, so to
Right.
speak, and so they don't have exposure, right? So as a result of that, the body just doesn't know how to deal with any kind of new stimulation or new sensory input that's coming to them. And this basically causes the child to tip over or have an upset reaction whenever they are dealing with textures or dealing with some kind of sensory input that's not familiar to them, especially in our age of the precious baby syndrome,
Right.
where parents definitely don't want their kids to be exposed to certain things, and that very often is causing a detriment to their kids. Milestones are later, and body awareness is affected, and textures also are affected very often.
Right. And we have also seen, apart from sensory issues, children do have a lot of anxiety to explore something new, even to meet someone or even to engage with their peer group. They're very anxious about it. And it actually can affect their behavior also and the play, which is so important in their development in early phases.
Right. So, I mean, I have my own soapbox about anxiety in kids today also, because there is definitely a sensory component to it, but I feel like the expectation from children today is so much different
Yeah,
from what it was when I was a child. I don't know, you're a different
correct,
generation, so
correct.
it might be a little different for you. But for us, it was, just go down and play. But here now it's like, what is the proper etiquette? Do you have play dates? How structured can it be? So anything and everything can trigger off your child. It's just a different circumstance. So it's almost like training yourself, but 20 years in advance to deal with anxiety. And that's a new area I think the parents are becoming more aware of.
Correct.
And so hopefully they come to therapists to seek guidance as to how to deal with it
Right, right.
appropriately.
Very true, very true. So the next question, my child has difficulty to hold pencil and trace. So how do we work on that?
Um, so again, just based on that one sentence, if it is a sensory problem, I would suggest, getting your child exposed to different types of textures. Okay. What that would mean is you can have him trace first, not using a pencil, maybe, but maybe doing it in rava, doing it in atta. Atta is a finer texture, talcum powder. I have some of these ideas on my Inspirium page, so you can check it out there.
Right.
But this will basically give the fingertips some kind of cue as to, actively forming the alphabets and also reinforcing perceptual formation in the brain. So the alphabet registration is happening as a result of it. If there is a sensory issue associated with the pencil, what I would suggest is having either tape, like if this is, now this is my pen.
Right.
So if this is where your child is going to hold the pen, I would suggest just putting mechanical tape or a rubber band on that particular point. So it gives them, a kind of contrast texture, so they know that's where their fingers need to be. And it will help them, give them a visual cue and allow them to write better. Now, this is assuming that that's the problem, but hopefully I've helped address some of it.
Correct. So there is a question which has popped up. It's a very general question. How to deal with autistic child with sensory issues?
Okay, I think number one, we've spoken about structure a lot already, right? So that's one piece of it, having structure to your day, and based on whether your child is hyper responsive or hypo responsive, which means they're overreacting or underreacting, I would give them very small bite-sized exposures to that particular thing in the house. So what that could mean is, if your child doesn't like messy play, doesn't like Play-Doh, doesn't like touching glue, I would start with, having them knead atta in the house, and step it up from there. So it basically depends on what those sensory issues are. But what I would suggest to the parent is keep the task as small as possible, because you don't want to overwhelm them and have them have a negative reaction, never want to do it again.
Correct. How can we manage sensory modulation is the next question.
Okay, so one of the most common tools that I found really helpful is using, if you have a cognitively, a child who understands emotion, understands what they are feeling, you have the zones of regulation, which is a very common tool that we use, where you have the red zone, the yellow zone, the blue zone, the green zone, and each of these zones stand for a particular emotion. Like, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling good today, I'm feeling meh, not so great, or I'm angry and upset, right?
Correct.
So I think if you can structure this really well, what can happen is it basically helps break down how the child is feeling to begin with, helps get them to the green zone, which is the zone that we want them to be in, and allows them to then transition forward.
Correct. So the next question related to handwriting or hand only. So how effective is pencil gripper for pencil grasp?
So I found pencil grippers, especially if your child can take it off, to be more of a distracting feature than helpful in any way, right? So what I strongly suggest is, you can do what I suggested, like do the rubber band, do the tape, and make sure that it's really tight and that your child can't take it off. They're still getting the texture that they need and the contrast, but they don't have to constantly manipulate the grippers, because grippers, especially if you're getting them from China, very poor quality is what we've seen. So typically we don't recommend it. Instead, we suggest strengthening for the fingers and a compensation using the tape or the rubber band, like that.
Right. So the next question, my child is extremely fearful of jumping from even a smaller height. How do we work on that?
So in my clinical practice, I've probably seen, and I've been practicing for 20 years, I've probably seen 5 kids that have had this kind of a reaction to transitioning through space, through walking over surfaces, above and below surfaces. And what I want to tell the parent, I know is really difficult and hard for you, but therapy can really help. While you're at home, one of the things I would suggest is, your child is fearful, so there's an increased state of anxiety in their body because of the sensory state already.
Right.
So any kind of activity you are doing at home, I would try and become a master at redirection as much as possible, and work on the upper trunk, maybe in sitting first, like leaning forward, leaning backward, throw the ball. So activate the vestibular system while sitting, where there's a broad base of support with your feet flat on the floor, and then slowly transition them to, maybe lifting their bum up from the seat and moving forward, but their feet are still planted. They still have the support of the bed or the chair, and they know that they are physically reinforced by borders around them and they're not going to hurt themselves.
Correct.
So it's a combination. So that at home, where you're working on sitting tasks with the parent, and then at home, in your clinical setup, if you're working well with your therapist, the combination of both will definitely make a difference in a few months. It's not going to be automatic, but it will definitely make a difference.
Right, right. So the question here is by Mr. Sandeep. My child is 4 years old. She tends to throw objects rather than putting them in proper place. How do we deal with this behavior of her?
So my assumption is that the child is seeking, and again, this is an assumption, right? Because I haven't seen the child. What I assume here is the child is seeking some kind of proprioceptive feedback in the joints,
Right,
okay, or wants to know, so if you try at home to throw something with your hand, you'll feel pressure in your elbow, you'll feel pressure in your wrist and at your shoulder.
correct,
So your child probably is not feeling his joints or her
correct,
joints at all, except when they're throwing
correct.
something.
So just to add
Okay?
on to that, the child actually has a low tone. So she is
Also has
speaking,
low.
yeah.
Okay. So, a lot of joint compression, a lot of deep pressure, all these things, a lot of 4-point weight bearing, all these things will definitely help your child decrease the throwing. And the other thing, in addition to this, I would suggest is make the throwing a game. So if they do want to throw, like get a basket and have them throw 20 balls into a basket, make balls out of paper, make balls out of socks if you don't have those many balls, and just have them, use both hands and throw.
Right,
So that will be activity based and it will be fun for your child as well.
correct.
So I think a combination of both these things will be helpful.
Right, right. So the next question is by Mrs. Meena. Please suggest few more auditory stimulation activities.
Auditory stimulation. So now if you have a child who is under responsive, which means you call out their name and they don't respond, I would first work on the vestibular system, which is your balance system, to get some amount of arousal, because your child probably isn't aroused enough. So at home, how would I do that? It would be a little difficult, especially if the child is non-responsive. But I would probably use a positive reinforcer like bubbles maybe, and hopefully, assume first that they will respond visually to something that they want. And once that happens, then transition to the auditory part as well.
Right,
Okay. So first work on, them popping bubbles and moving around a little bit, then maybe doing a little jumping, and then transitioning to whatever command you want them to follow. Now, if you have the other end of the spectrum where you have a child who's over responsive to certain sounds, that's a little harder to get rid of. But exposure over time, and now we have a lot of apps available that also expose you to particular frequencies for short periods of time a day. Again, everything in moderation. You don't want your child listening to this for 2 and 3 hours a day. It can alter brainwave.
correct.
That's what research has shown. Can alter sleep. We don't want that happening. But that's definitely something that might be an option. And I'm sure your therapist will suggest it too.
Right, right. Very true. So the next question is, what about sensory issues in a child who is visually impaired? Child with vestibular seeking and tactile defensiveness.
So that's an interesting combination. So if you have a child who's vestibular seeking, who's visually impaired, I think, feeding into the vestibular system first is the primary piece here. I don't very likely suggest vestibular system activation because it can have very detrimental effects. But if the parent at home can, has some kind of a movement disc, so these are like cushions with air in them that move, tip-top cushions or silicone gel cushions that they can have at home that help their child move, and get some amount of vestibular stimulation. It will help them stay focused and sit longer periods of time, and that is a concern. At the same time, I would say exposure to different textures while getting vestibular input, more vestibular input will help them focus better as well and tolerate textures better. I hope that makes sense. So I also would not do smooth textures like pastes and glue and gum with them immediately. I would more typically do rougher textures with them, assuming that they're tactile defensive, like you said, and slowly move towards the more slimy type of things with your child.
Right, right. Okay. So the next question is, what could be a best basic activity to focus on imitation when the child is having lot of stimming?
Okay. Um, so to me, if your child is stimming and you want them to imitate, they're not going to follow what you are saying at all.
Correct.
So typically, when a child stims, it's basically to get aroused to a particular level, to feel centered and focused, and to, you know, get aroused, basically sensorially aroused to a particular level. I would suggest definitely not telling them to stop, because it's not going to help you. What I would instead do is redirect, right? So initially, I may use a physical cue if I'm doing imitation. Like I might take an apple and I might place the apple and tell them to try and do it on the same, like go and put it on the table. Or if you're playing a game, try to get them into a pose. For example, if they're flapping, right? Try to get them to do a game using their hands that blocks them from doing the stimming activity,
Right.
but at the same time is purposeful and gives them the deep pressure that may help them with the stimming that they've got in their hands going on right now. So that again will have to specifically be planned by your therapist. Like if it is flapping, there might be 3 or 4 activities that you can do. If there's visual stimming, I would suggest making a sensory bottle at home. There are a bunch of recipes available on Pinterest. You can look them up with glitter, glue. There are certain proportions that you make, and they really help. Getting your give them the visual bottle for a bit, and then get them back to a sit down task that you want them to do, and it will decrease the stimming and increase focus, fairly quickly. So I really think that it would help a child in that
Right.
situation.
So we have one last question as for now here. So what about children looking in the mirror and moves hands and body movement every time?
So if they're looking in the mirror and flapping is basically what I understand, I think.
Yeah.
Is that what they're
Yeah.
along? Um, so if there is, so typically when they look in the mirror, again, it's for visual reinforcement. You could use the mirror to play games, like have shaving foam on the mirror and have them wipe the mirror. So that's going to take care of the flapping that's happening as well. If they can clean it with a newspaper, try and reinforce doing a lot of joint compression over there. If you are using the mirror again, you might put shaving foam on their nose or body cream on their chin and tell them to wipe it while looking at the mirror. So again, here they're using their hands and simultaneously looking at the mirror, so it improves visual attention and hopefully decreases stimming as well. I hope that's given the parents some idea of things that could be possibly done.
Right. Right. So the next question is how to resolve toilet awareness issue in autistic child of 3 years old.
So, toileting, so this is a different sensory system, right? Here we are talking about what we call interoception. It's how a child is becomes aware of the inside of his body. Okay, so it could be I'm getting a stomach pain. The child may not realize that they're getting a stomach pain, but might start laughing and they don't know the appropriate reaction to it. This is just an example. The other example is, toilet training goes for a toss because they can't feel their bladder getting full. They can't feel bowel movements at all. And as a result of which, they need a physical cue like a diaper. And very often you'll hear parents saying, oh, he'll go potty, but he'll go potty only if he's wearing the diaper on. So that's where the physical cue is your diaper on, and what you have to do is increase awareness of the stomach by doing some core activities with them.
Right.
Sit-ups is a good way. Superman, Ulta Superman. There are some videos on my Inspiring Holistic page as well that will give you an idea of what can be done. But these things will definitely help you with core strength. Will definitely help you with interoception. And if it persists, you may want to talk to your pediatrician about it, because 3 years again, toilet training starting at 2.5 is fine. And my pediatrician had told me up until 4, there are no alarm bells going, but you want them not to be bedwetting. That is a concern, especially if it persists beyond 4 years.
Right. Right. Okay. So we usually come across a lot of cases related to idiopathic toe walking. So would it be also related to sensory issues? And if yes, how do we address?
So actually, my son toe walks, and I think for a while we were trying to figure out why that was happening. So we definitely have short, tightness, and we're doing a lot of stuff to help with that. But he's tactile hypersensitive as well, and he's vestibular seeking as well. Now again, I would like to think that my kids are normal, but like I said earlier, all of us out there, kids and adults alike, have sensory needs that need to be met to varying degrees. Like what I need might be 10%, what you need might be 25 in a particular sensory system. The other example that I give is music. So when I wake up, I'm not a morning person. I'm super cranky. I want to be quiet. I'm not okay with it. My husband, on the other hand, is like blaring music, making coffee. It's a great time in the day for him. So this is all sensory how we react to information that we're getting from the environment. What I suggest, if it is a tactile issue, exposing them to different textures on their feet, that could be one thing. So you could use loofah, you could use, khadi cloth, like your dusters in the house. Do not use Scotch Brite. Do not use the steel wool.
Right, right.
Please, this is like old school. A lot of therapists might recommend it,
Correct,
like the
correct.
old school therapists, but this is not okay. Please do not do that. You could use, when I say sandpaper, you get different textures of sandpaper. So it's rough but safe. So this is another thing that you can use is, what else can you use? You can expose them to massage, like foot massages using different different thicknesses of cream. If there is a vestibular piece, a lot of rotation is suggested, but I very strongly recommend your therapist doing that for you, because if you overstimulate, you could have a lot of other issues associated with it. So you want to do it just right, and that is something that only your therapist might know. At home, what you could safely do, according to me, if you have a swing rotation 5 counts, or if you have a chair with wheels on it, clockwise, anti-clockwise, about 5 turns should be perfectly okay. But I would not do anything more than that.
Right, right.
Especially if it's a vestibular piece, you would talk to your therapist about it.
Correct. Okay. So the next question is, my child is 5 years old and he continuously likes to spin round and round. He's been diagnosed as autism. How to work on that habit of spinning?
So spinning is a stimming behavior again, and this particular child obviously wants a lot of vestibular arousal, right? So what I suggest is, if you have therapy happening twice a week in a very controlled environment, your therapist will probably use swings to different degrees to help them deal with getting that dose of vestibular input that they need. But you, as a parent at home, could probably use, like I said, the chair with the wheels on. And if you have some length, you can go up and down and give them some linear feedback. Using that, I don't know if it's easy. You can push your chair in the, you can push your child in the chair and go from one end to the other fairly quickly, maybe for about 1 minute, and then rotate them for about 30 seconds in each direction. So this will give you some amount of vestibular feedback at home. But again, use with caution. Your therapist knows your child the best.
Correct, correct.
So talk to them about, is it enough? And then after that, or is it too much? And then use it accordingly. I'm just giving you general ideas.
Right. Okay. So one of the commonest problems we come across in younger children. So the question is, my child doesn't like shampooing or washing hair. We also have tough time during haircuts or nail cutting. How do we address that?
So this is again a tactile issue that's very common with a lot of young kids. And there are fairly decent interventions that can be done. What I suggest is using a lot of deep pressure. So if this is your nail, you're going to press down. I have really bad nails right now, but don't look at that. You're going to like really press down on the nails with a significant amount of pressure. Repeat this, as many times while you're sitting down with your child. You can do that. Whatever you do not apply light pressure. Feather light pressure is not your friend, is not your child's friend. It is painful to them, especially if they are sensitive to haircuts and things like that, or even nail cutting. So you are going to use a heavy hand whenever you're, applying pressure on their nails. I also suggest really heavy pressure massage on their head. This is another thing that really helps. And one repetition 2 or 3 times in a week is not going to help. You have to do this regularly. And if you know that your haircut is going to happen in a week, right? You may want to double the amount of effort that you're doing to desensitize that particular area. Pinterest has social stories. So if your child is aware that he's going to the doctor or going to the dentist and the barber. What I suggest is you basically show them the social story that talks about he's going to go, he's going to sit. So he will have
Correct,
anxiety.
correct,
It'll happen before he goes to the place. He will be able to process it a little better as compared to what would happen if he directly is taken to the barber and has to sit down in the chair without mentally getting prepared for it as well. So a combination of these two things should decrease the amount of stress over time
correct.
and help deal with it a little better.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll just take one more question from my end and we'll move to the online. There are a lot of questions we can see. Okay, so the question is, my child has very difficult time sitting at one place and focusing on any activity. He seems to get distracted very easily. He's currently 7 years of age.
Um, so what I suggest there is work on, so if he is getting constantly distracted, you may want to give him some kind of movement breaks. Okay. So movement breaks are a combination of proprioceptive and vestibular activities done for about 30 to 45 seconds. Okay. It could be something as simple as a jumping jack, like 15 jumping jacks, or it could be as simple as something like, um, stomping with your legs really heavily to give proprioceptive feedback and vestibular in combination. And this will get your child calm enough to focus for a prolonged period of time. Hopefully this is something that you can implement with your child to help them focus longer. Also, if you're doing a sit down task, keep the task short. So if you start today and it's 5 minutes, over time you need to build up. So
Correct,
you're going to do a movement break, you're going to do a 3 minute sit down, you're going to do a movement break, you're going to do a 3 minute sit down for the first day. The second day you might increase it by 1 minute, so make it 4 minutes, right?
correct,
But your child needs to be like, you need to micromanage the whole time piece, and you will definitely see an improvement.
correct, correct. Okay. So what about child with mild autism likes to bang hand on surfaces or with objects?
So again, to me, this sounds more like a proprioceptive seeking behavior. So a lot of joint compression, right? This is something that I highly recommend here. And a lot of weight bearing activities through the wrist and the upper body would really be helpful. So wheelbarrow walking, doing things like, a horse position and then transfers in that position will also help. Having them do like having them under the table and drawing on the lower surface of the table will also help increase proprioceptive feedback through the elbow and shoulder. So these are some of the activities that you can try and hopefully they help your child.
Right. There was one more question above. So, in children with visual impairment, there are a lot of oromotor concerns as well. And due to visual impairment, there is even more difficulty in trying to introduce textures in mouth.
Uh, yes. So again, this is another soapbox, but what I would suggest here is initially trying out with objects that have different textures. So Chewy Tube has a range of textures available, right? So you can introduce those as tools for your child to bite down on and get exposed inside their mouth. And then eventually probably use the end of the Chewy Tubes with different textures on them, like applesauce, or maybe something thicker like carrot with a little texture in it, and just expose them to it. I very strongly, like, as a therapist trained in oral motor interventions, I might do some of this, but very often I recommend this to my speech therapist counterparts, just because there's so much for a notice to do right now. I think a speech therapist would do justice to such a large component of the job,
Correct, correct, correct. So the question is, the child does lot of spitting and making lot of oral sounds. And the same person had written self-talk. So I think it's a combination of that. Self-talk, lot of oral sounds and
So
lot of spitting.
So to me, these are sensory seeking behaviors in the mouth, right? So very typically what we do is a throat massage and oral massage. Spitting might be an associated behavior that you will have to uh, behaviorally deal with, and that requires a little more than what I might be able to tell you today. But in terms of the pressure, you definitely can try oral motor pressure around the face, around the mouth, on the throat, and this should help with the self talk and the sounds a little bit. And I think a Chewy tube might also be a really good tool that
Right.
this person could invest in, because the deep pressure in their mouth will also help calm their mouth down, and allow for more productive language and communication. So I think that's a good tool to use.
Right. So how can occupational therapists help with sensitive issues for food consistencies or feeding in general with respect to poor appetite, self-feeding, chewing, etc.?
So if you have a child who has, I'm going to break this up into parts, right? So if you have a really young child who has difficulty with fine motor, a lot of eye-hand coordination is required to pick up whatever is on the plate and put it into your mouth. So that's one particular part that an autist might deal with, right? So finger foods, tolerating textures around their mouth or even in their mouth is something else that an autist can do. Again, in Mumbai, I think there are a few people who do it, but primarily I think speech therapists address it here in the city. We also do a lot of oral motor textures inside the mouth using desensitization techniques, using pouches and muslin bags. But again, if you have a good speech therapist, this is something that they could handle as well. So that's the sensory component of it. The third part of it is positioning. So if we have a child who has who has cerebral palsy, the autist very often is responsible for teaching the parent how to position
Correct.
the different positionings that are required for self and for the child to prevent aspiration, to allow for better chewing and swallowing, and for better transitioning through the oral motor phase. So I think these are some of the things that an autist can definitely help with, especially if they are working with your child over a period of time. They can definitely train the parent for it as well.
Right. There's one more question here. A child loves to smell everyone's hair.
Um, if that's the only sensory issue they have, that's great. Um, but what I would suggest is having small bottles with different scents in them. It can be, and just giving them a chance to smell 3 or 4 different scents during the day. And I'm fairly sure that over 3 weeks, your child should not require would not be smelling other people's hair anymore. So maybe have like a kit of 6 or 7 bottles and allow them to smell these at regular intervals through the day. And I think you're sorted in a few weeks.
Right, right. Okay. If a child having autism has a habit of throwing objects and biting, what can be done?
So if this child is non-verbal, I think the biting probably is because they're frustrated. If they're throwing a tantrum, it's behavioral. If they want deep pressure in their mouth and they're biting, then I would definitely try a lot of deep pressure around their mouth to see if that helps with it. But very often, based on my experience, what I've seen is the biting is typically communication or frustration based because they can't communicate their need, and so the biting happens. The throwing to me is a behavior. So you go, if there is no proprioceptive need, you throw it, that's fine. You try and make it a game. The other thing is the child, whatever they throw, they are made to go pick it up and bring it back and put it in place. So there needs to be this reinforcement that if you do throw something, you are expected to go pick it up and bring it back. So that might help decrease the throwing behavior as well.
Right. Okay. So I am left with 3 questions from my end. So guys, another 10-15 minutes probably. And if there are any questions, do put it across. We'll address them. Ma'am will address them. So the next question is, my child constantly tries to put things in mouth, even those are non-eatable stuff. He's 6 years old and he's diagnosed with autism.
So again, I think the Chewy tube, there's a lot of oral seeking over here. So the Chewy tube is a really good tool to use. Maybe have it on the child's neck and allow them to put this in their mouth on a regular basis. And it should definitely decrease the amount of sensory seeking behaviors that the child has over time. So I think that's definitely something that can be done. Um, Besides that, I would suggest talk to your therapist and try and figure out a plan to help deal with it a little better.
Right. Okay. So the next question is, my child gets startled or fearful whenever the doorbell rings. He's currently 4 years of age.
So to me, there could be two things. One, they're auditory hypersensitive. The other thing is they have primitive reflexes that have not integrated yet. So I think you would need to work on both of these and try to rule out one versus the other. Um, the doorbell, what I would suggest is getting a musical instrument, maybe like a piano, and having them go through the range of musical notes. The other thing is I would do a lot of quadruped based, meaning horse position based activities, and have them reach out cross body midline and see if that helps over time. So use both of these techniques together and see if it helps decrease it a little bit.
Right. So I can see one question here. Uh, my son is 14 years old, child with CP, and has a problem of urine. So I'm not sure if it is related to urine retention or he cannot control it. So do you want to address that?
So to me, again, if it is a timing issue, I would start like again, as long as everything else has been ruled out and the pediatrician is not concerned by this, I would probably try just taking or having the son go at regular intervals if he is mobile to the bathroom and try and set fixed times. Start with that as the first piece, and then after that, maybe try interoception, a few crunches, and see if you can associate that with his bladder movements as well. But this is based on the assumption that the pediatrician doesn't have any other concerns
Right.
here,
Okay, so the question is,
or he's not on any other medication.
yes. So the next question is, which reflex would not be integrated, especially in the case which we discussed about the doorbell?
So Moro is one of the biggest pieces that I would probably think about. And it's something that you don't see so often anymore. But we see it being an issue academically. We see it very prevalent in kids with ADHD, and there's not enough research done out there for me to like very concretely say.
Yeah.
There are no large studies. There are no large studies that talk about it, unfortunately. But as a therapist, I mean, there are tricks that we can use to help deal with it, and very often it
Yeah.
helps.
So just to add on to that, ATNR reflex, which is also related to development of binaural hearing, even in that case, if this reflex along with Moro's, if not integrated, can also lead to, sudden startle, especially if there is any sudden sound like doorbell or any form of sudden noise. Okay. So there's one question, child who looks from side of the eyes or peripheral vision.
So to me, this is typically again visual stimulation, right? So visual stimming behaviors. So what I would strongly suggest is try and get some kind of visual tracking program in place. Talk to your therapist about how to do this. And I'm sure they can give you a home plan. Try and figure out a glitter bottle. That would really help because they're obviously seeking some amount of deep pressure from the corner of the eye, and the movement from top to down will help give them that reinforcement and transition them back to a sit down activity.
Right, right. Okay. So I'll just go through with my last question. So it's like a general question for all the parents and therapists. So we all believe in early detection and early intervention so that we try to, recover and minimize the problems the child would have in later stages. So based on that, how do we know or identify whether the child would have sensory problems? And as a parent or therapist, what are the key, areas we should look at in a very early stage so that we can seek a professional help?
Um, so it's a fairly broad question, right? All of us have some amount of sensory quirks. Sometimes what happens is a particular quirk might be exaggerated in our children, and it could be the kind of textures that we eat. Your child may not like to eat, very soft foods. There might be a gag to particular type of textures. This is orally. The clothing, having issues with tags, having issues with haircut. Um, Either pacing a lot or bouncing while sitting or rocking your legs while sitting in the classroom. These are other sensory features that come into play as well. So these are things that are commonly seen in your kid. They are sensory issues which have fairly easy solutions to them. You can talk to a therapist and get ideas as to what could be done to help with it. What else can I say? Most sensory things are a combination of exposure, the right exposure, not just exposure, but the right exposure in the right dose. Um, and that is prescribed, right?
Right.
Like I said, nobody, like, you're not supposed to use the steel wool. That is not an appropriate texture for the body. That's why it's used on
Correct.
horses and not on
Correct.
humans. Even overstimulation, like vestibular stimulation, doing too much of it can cause nausea, vomiting. I remember very early on, this is a story that, I mean, this is something that I'll never forget. I overdid the vestibular stimulation. I had someone throw up on me because their sensory system was out of whack.
Right.
And it's a learning process. But again, that's why you need to respect the sensory systems, realize that there is a tolerance to it. It possibly could be painful for your child, so don't underestimate what they're going through. But there are solutions to it. Your brain can be trained for it, and neural plasticity is something that goes on throughout life. It probably happens the fastest when they are really young because they're learning so quickly. But there's so much of amazing stuff that your brain can do.
Correct.
You can't afford to give up on it. So I think there are definitely things that can be done.
Right. Right. Very true. What are the other things for visual stimulation? Is one last question I can see here.
Besides the glitter bottle, if your child is, like, I would suggest, if they want to look out of the window, let them look outside the window, set a timer so there's an auditory cue for them, and then they come back and they sit down and do the task that's being allotted to them. So it might initially be just 2 or 3 minutes, and then they need to go back to the window. But like I said earlier, do it's a visual break for them and not a movement break here. You're shifting between what they need sensorially and what they like, getting a productive job done while sitting down, and hopefully over time the need for this decreases through constant exposure.
Right. Right. And I'll just scroll to just to check we have taken up all the questions. Uh, so looks like we did finish all the questions here. Okay. So I think we have covered up all the questions from my side as well as any questions which came up online as well. So that was really insightful, very, very productive, very nice, very practical information you shared. And this is just for the audience, the parents or therapists, whoever are online. And if they wish to, seek more information or wish to connect, please do follow Inspirium page. I'll definitely share details on my story if anyone wants to know more about, Dr. Franzina and their team's work. And they're sharing a lot of activities on everyday basis, which is helping a lot of parents around. So a must follow page. And thank you, doctor, for coming up second time here. And hopefully we will, slowly build it up on this.
No, Harish, thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure, and I think it's a great way to help parents and a large number of parents at one go. So thank you for even taking the initiative and doing this for all of us and getting us involved. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you guys for staying online. And we'll be having a session tomorrow on mental health at 5:30. So stay safe, stay good, have a nice evening. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.